Hey guys, this is Blue. So, Act 6, Chapter 4 has arrived. We're at the end of Act 6 now. I am making my way through it. And with this chapter comes Necro, which is very exciting, is a very fun bot. I will be ranking him up soon, and I will do a gameplay video on him, I'm sure, over the next week. But today I just wanted to talk about the state of the game a little bit because now that we have reached the conclusion of the story, a lot of people are curious and anxious as to what will happen next, right? Because this is it, right? We are at the end of the planned content, right? They clearly had a schedule of content that they wanted to release when the game came back in May. We are now at the end of that. So what happens now? Okay, now I want to preface this by saying I don't know. None of us do. I don't have any inside knowledge, but I can make some inferences and some educated guesses based upon just my own knowledge of business and marketing, as well as what Netflix has said about their gaming division and the decisions they've made in this game so far since coming to Netflix. Okay, so the number one question, obviously, is the game going to stay live? And then with that, if it does, is it going to continue to be updated? Now, again, I don't know. They could pull the plug in 2 weeks, but we have to remember a couple things here. First of all, Netflix is a wildly different company than Kabam. Kabam, a handful of their games make up their entire business. Netflix is a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate with thousands and thousands of pieces of content and games, movies, etc., etc. They are choosing very deliberately, even though their gaming division is new, to invest quite a bit of money into their gaming division, and they are continuing to do so. That is good news for all of their games. Even though their gaming division has not been successful thus far, they have said, including recently, that they are continuing to invest into games in 2024. Okay? But we have to remember that a game like this is effectively a non-entity to them. They could keep this game running for 10 years. It would mean nothing to them. Okay? They have the money to do whatever they want. So my sense is that any decisions they make about a game like this will be made in the context of their gaming division as a whole. Now, it is true that they shut down a couple of their games in the past few months, and when they did so, they did that abruptly and without notice or announcement, and that was very disappointing. So they could do that with this game or other games, and the really unfortunate thing is that we know that they are choosing not to communicate in any way, shape, or form. That's perhaps the most frustrating part of all of this, right? When the game came back, they put out a trailer. We got one announcement in game. That was it. We have gotten no communication of any kind about good things or bad things in the last 8 months. And so we have to surmise that that will continue going forward. But here's the thing. My guess would be that the game will remain live for a while. Again, I have no idea how long, but I would not assume that just because we're at the end of the story that the game's going to be shut down. That actually doesn't really make any sense. There's a million reasons why a game might be shut down or a piece of content removed. So I'm going to hope and expect that the game will stay live. So then let's just assume that that is the case, okay? Well, what are they going to do? My guess would be that the game will continue to be updated, but in a fairly minimal fashion. What I would expect, if anything, would be for the return of time slide or spotlight style missions, kind of like we had in the old game that run for 2 or maybe 4 weeks at a time. What they would probably do is do something very similar to what they have been doing in the story, right? They would have just a lot of random bot and mod combinations that they would recycle over and over again because that is exactly what they've been doing in the story, right? There's been very little that has been actually new. A lot of the mods are used over and over again. A lot of the bots are used over and over again. Sometimes you see the same bot twice on the same lane. I would assume that if they're going to do anything, it would be something like that. That would be simple, cost-effective for them, pretty easy for them to plan out. And it would be necessary, however, if the game were to remain live and for it to be practically functional. And what I mean by that is, at the moment, the majority of the really good rewards we get in the game come from story. We get some rewards from AMs, but honestly, when it comes to sparks, programs, things like that, most of that comes from the story. And so if there's nothing to replace the story and the game does stay live, well, then people would have to spend potentially thousands of energon for sparks and other resources in order to do things like rank ups. Nobody's going to do that. That would not be feasible in the slightest. So even a lot of players who might otherwise be inclined to stay would end up leaving. So I think that most likely they will do the bare minimum necessary in order to keep the game functional, and doing something like a 2 to 4 week time slide or spotlight on a rolling basis would be what I would expect if I would expect anything. Okay, they could do, gauntlet style missions like we had in the old game that run for a limited time. If this game were to stay live for a long time, which we have no idea about, we could potentially get another AM map, but I would not expect that anytime soon. Beyond that, though, I'm not really expecting any changes. Just based upon what they've done, I don't really see them adding things like new arenas or changes to the raid store or any other new or exciting special missions. As much as we would love to see the return of LOC-style missions, I do not expect them to give us anything with really long, difficult fights. I also don't expect there to be any further new bots. They gave us Dead End and Chromia. I don't think they're going to add anybody else. Now, again, I could be wrong, and I hope I am. But I would highly doubt that any significant changes will be made to the game, just given the fact that the game has been pretty much identical for the past 8 months. So unless they have implemented a new strategy and a new game plan, if you will, right? If they implement, let's say, a phase 2, because the story was obviously phase 1, unless they implement a phase 2 that includes a lot more content, which I highly doubt, I would not expect anything particularly exciting, all right? We also have to remember that this game, the player base, was always small. It is noticeably smaller than it was, though, even during the Kabam days. And you can get a sense of the player base just by things like AM rankings and arenas. I mean, you can do one round of arenas, just a few fights for the daily achievement, and you can rank in the hundreds, not even the thousands sometimes. You can... I do know a few people who semi-retired and created their own alliance and ran AMs alone or maybe with one friend and ranked top 100. So my sense is that this game has no more than probably 2,000 truly active daily players. There are more players than that probably log in occasionally or do AMs, but this is a very small player base. And although it is true that there are still new players finding this game, I have heard from some of them through my channel and otherwise, it is quite clear that the attrition rate, the dropout rate, if you will, would be very high. Because this game, in this new iteration on Netflix, there's definitely enough content to keep you going and engaged for a few months, but longer term, it gets a lot harder because, as we all know, you hit a wall eventually. It starts to become very stale. This game has revolved around AMs and the story for the last 8 months. There's been effectively nothing new. There's nothing difficult, really, in the game outside of high-level AMs. So any new players, they're going to do their thing. They're going to go through the story. They're going to get to a point to where they can do AMs, and then eventually a lot of them are going to get bored and they're going to leave. So because of all of that, if anything, in the coming months, I do expect the already small player base to get smaller. Unless something dramatically changes, I don't expect the player base to get larger, which is why I would assume that just from a business perspective, they will do the bare minimum to keep it going. There is going to be a core group of very devoted players that stay in the game no matter what, but I don't really see the game significantly increasing its numbers unless something very dramatic happened, which I do not expect. I also think that they will continue to fix some bugs every now and then, but a lot of the bugs, a lot of the most persistent long-term glitches in the game that were never fixed before will also remain unremedied and will stay that way forever, okay? So the bottom line is, beyond hoping for the game to stay live, I wouldn't hope for much, okay? Again, I hope I'm wrong. I mean, it would be amazing to be surprised, but I think that this game will stay around for a while. Whether that's another 2 months or 2 years, I have no idea, but I think it will be updated in a very minimal fashion going forward. And so as for myself, some people have asked me, if you're curious, what am I going to do? I'm definitely sticking around for a while. I think that February will be a significant test for the game. So if we get to 2 weeks from now and nothing arrives, that's a concern. If we get to 4 weeks from now, if we get to late February and there's no new content, then that's a big red flag. That's a sign that they very well may not be updating the game anymore at all. And that would be very disappointing. But we'll just have to see what happens over the next 2 to 4 weeks. The only other things that we would hope would definitely come in a few weeks would be, say, Nemesis and Necro as the lower tier versions. I was hoping that we would get Nemesis yesterday. We did not. So hopefully we will get Nemesis and Necro, at some point in the next month. So from my perspective, I will keep playing for a while. I don't know if I'll run 2 accounts long term. That will depend also, by the way, on things like my team. Alliances of all levels are having a very hard time recruiting. Many of the top and mid-level teams have multiple ults in them just to survive. And the fact is that for a lot of us, including me, a lot of the joy that I get from playing this game comes from the people that I play with. I mean, some of the guys I know I've been playing with for years. If they stick around, I will be more likely to stay around, at least with one account, even if I don't run a couple of accounts. If there's no new content, though, and teams start to fall apart and people don't even really want to be doing AMs anymore and all of that, then, I might just semi-retire. But I think that as long as the game is around, I will at least have one active account, even if I'm just playing occasionally or even if I'm only doing AMs. And I think that there are a fair amount of other people who are in a similar position as me, longtime veteran players who love the game, who are not going to be inclined to quit very quickly, but obviously we need some motivation in the form of content or otherwise to keep us going. And so that's where I am, guys. Those are my thoughts. Those are my general guesstimates and predictions. Like I said, I have no idea what will happen, but as long as the game is around, it's around. So my advice would be enjoy it. Rank up Necro if you want. He's a lot of fun. Rank up any other bots you want to use. Do it now before the game either dies quite literally or dies just because of lack of content. We have no idea. So my advice is enjoy it while it lasts. Have fun, So I'll leave it there for now, guys. Do let me know if you have any questions and let me know what your plans are. Are you still playing? Are you going to keep playing for a while? Are you going to wait and see what happens in February and then make a decision? I'll be curious to hear what you guys are going to be doing as well. So take care, guys, and we'll speak again soon.